Hi, everybody. Hope everybody still got energy now post-lunch. I think we've had two really interesting presentations with two very different perspectives, and I hope with my presentation, which is going to be on why retail matters, we're going to be able to tie together the two different perspectives, the publisher and the retailer perspective meet. So just a little bit about me and why I'm here talking about retail. As Jim mentioned, I'm the general manager at Jashanmal Books. We're a distributor, wholesaler, and retailer. And one of the other, we operate about 20 of our own points of sale selling print media. But one of the other perspectives I bring to the table, our group, I'm part of a larger group and I'm on the executive committee on that group. And we operate about 150 other stores, everything from department stores through to luxury retail, through to franchise retail, through to our own retail concept. So have quite a lot of information and insight across different channels. So what does magazines in retail mean? I think what retail gives magazine publishers is they give access to consumers. They make product available to consumers. And by making product available, access and availability combined is something that stimulates demand. Now, this may run a little bit counter to sort of traditional economic theory that, obviously supply and demand is what sets the price of a good. But if people who are interested in a specific subject have trouble finding magazines or media around that subject in a specific environment, which retail creates, then sales are going to be affected. So really talking about how making product available in the right channels is a key to stimulating demand. So start with a little bit of background and context. And this is an image from the Borders store on Charing Cross Road when it closed a couple of years ago. And the reason I'm sharing this slide is that a publisher who we work with, this store and had another store, there was another Borders store not even 10 minutes walk away on Oxford Street. These two stores combined represented 30% of the entire UK newsstand sales for this particular publisher's title. Think about that. Two stores, Borders at that time had about 22 stores in the UK, and then think about all the other potential points of sale where this magazine was available. Just these two stores, which had among the best magazine sections of any stores in the UK, represented 30% of the publisher's sales. These were sales that they never got back, or certainly within the 6 months of these stores closing, did not get back, despite working with other bookstores in the area, despite working with other retailers who sold their magazine, despite running a subs offer to make sure, to do whatever they could to offset the potential impact of these stores closing, they lost 30% of their sales. So that's how important retail, or in this case, two specific stores, can be to a publisher's sales. Yeah. The other important consideration for publishers, obviously, a large part of many of your much of your revenue comes from ad sales. And one other reality of the business is that commoditized advertising, so the really low-end advertising, in many cases classifieds for newspapers, which obviously represented a lot of revenue, but on a unit-by-unit basis was quite small. That's gone to the internet, and it's probably not going to come back. I mean, I think we've just seen, Vivian showed us a very innovative use of Facebook advertising to stimulate a subscriptions campaign. But, I mean, a lot of the advertising that previously existed within newspapers especially, and to a lesser extent magazines, has really gone online. That's gone, that's not coming back, that's revenue, that's gone. And then, of course, another thing we've heard a lot about today, a lot of other speakers have talked about, is there's much more media vying for our attention than ever before. Television is as strong as it ever was, more choice than ever. It's in a way almost turned into a passive background medium in much of the same way that music has turned into, where television will be consumed parallel to another medium. Very often you're watching TV, you're on your tablet, you're on your smartphone, etc. Obviously, social media, two largest examples being Facebook and Twitter, vying for our attention, different devices across which we're consuming media, tablets, smartphones, and obviously a channel like YouTube, mobile gaming, videos of cats playing, piano. There's really all kinds of stuff vying for our attention. So this is the scenario we find ourselves in. Retail, some specialty channels that existed for magazines under threat. Commoditized advertising gone, having an impact on ad revenue, of course, and competition from other channels, other media. But these other channels also offer different touch points, and it's those touch points that I'm going to return to in a little while. What I first want to talk about is what I want you guys to start thinking about is thinking about magazines as a physical object, rather than as a delivery mechanism for content, rather than a delivery media. Think about it as a physical object. And the reason I mention that is I hope everyone in the audience still recognizes what this is. Anybody doesn't know what this is? Okay, all right, okay, all right. So this is a media. This is obviously a vinyl record. Vinyl is something that everybody had predicted would disappear. And as a mass market delivery mechanism for music, it is gone. I mean, that's not the purpose it serves anymore. However, you're seeing a rise of specialized stores selling vinyl. They sell them to aficionados, they sell them to DJs, they sell them to a very specific channel. And it's at a premium. I mean, you're not buying vinyl to buy the music. You're buying vinyl to buy the physical object. And I want that thought for you guys to hang on to that thought for a little bit of a while. Think about magazines. Think about the products you craft and the products you sell as physical product, as something that demands to be a physical product. The way the vinyl industry is thinking about it, and just to share some stats over the last few years, this is vinyl sales over the last 3 years. An industry that in the early 90s was basically dead is now selling upwards of close to 4 million units a year, which, okay, from zero. So this is something that's an industry that's sort of recast itself into a different light. So think about the magazine as a physical object. That's sort of one takeaway I would like to think about. Another sort of myth that I personally find disturbing and even today we've heard it sort of perpetuated is that young people don't read magazines. All right, so I'd ask the question, if they cannot buy magazines in the stores where they shop, how are they even going to discover magazines? So the reason I say this is 2 weeks ago I was traveling, I was in a German city, a second-tier city, not one of the capitals. I was in a suburb. And I was, going to the local magazine store there to buy, my selection of, sort of cool independent magazines and whatever. And I was standing in line. And it was the reason that I'd gone to this particular store was the only store in this town where I could get international press. And that too, for specialty titles. Standing in line behind me was a sort of 14 or 15-year-old girl clutching the latest copy of Vogue US, the September issue, the big one, with all the ads, all the fashion reports, all the trend analysis. And she was really, she was legitimately excited to be buying this. And this, I thought, was quite gratifying. However, there was a slightly depressing side to the story, which was where the store was located. The store was located it was a kiosk in the train station. This was the only place in this town. This is a town with 2 bookstores. This is a town with plenty of cafes. It's got a nice little sort of buzzing city center. The only place to buy international press in this town, or even, let's say, anything beyond the sort of top 10, top 20 German magazine titles, the only place in town was the train station. Not exactly the coolest place to go buy magazines, right? So that's another thing. It's, as I said, there's this myth being perpetuated that young people don't read magazines. And one of the reasons they don't is because they can't discover the product. So does everyone here know Urban Outfitters? Yeah. Hands up for those who do know Urban Outfitters. All right. Urban Outfitters is a very cool retail concept. I mean, it's a big box store. They're all, they sell everything, as you can see here, from clothes to music to books to, it sells a lifestyle, and it is, I would say, one of the best examples of big box stores where young people shop, right? It's clearly geared at young people. They sell books, but you can't buy magazines at Urban Outfitters, which I find very disturbing. And one of the reasons I would say this is the inflexibility in the magazine supply chain. The UK, we've seen a lot of pretty good examples of the UK supply chain today, and I would say it's one of the more flexible supply chains, one of the more robust supply chains in the magazine industry. But when we look at a lot of other markets, and I think of the US here in this case as well, the magazine supply chain is very inflexible. A lot of retailers are not equipped to handle the sale or return nature of the magazine business. A lot of retailers, the margins are unacceptable to them. There's a lot of layers to the supply chain, which means that the margins are obviously compressed. But one thing I find very strange, and we've seen this, multiple slides on this, a publisher is happy to sell a $6 magazine for $1 as a subscription, but they insist on selling it at $4.50 to the retailer. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me if retailers could be a potential partner who deliver a very important audience to you, and that's another thought I want to take away. Partnerships with retailers. Retailers, especially someone like Urban Outfitters, has the mind share and consequently the market share among a certain slice of your potential readership and your potential audience. They have a relationship with those. And I think crafting partnerships with those retailers is a key part of what retail can deliver to the magazine supply chain. Some retailers have embarked on this themselves. A couple of years ago, we had a presentation from Tyler Brûlé, founder of Monocle. And Monocle themselves have diversified. It started as a magazine brand, and they've diversified into their own retail. But for them, they're looking at it a slightly different way. Their stores are part of their advertising sales story, right? They're forming partnerships with different brands who are their advertisers and extending it from on the page to digital to an in-store environment. So this is, again, the power of retail and the power of these types of partnerships where retailers are good at a certain thing. They're good at real estate. They're good at developing audience. They're good at evolving those relationships with an audience. But retailers themselves are pretty bad at forming the types of relationships that magazines are able to form with their advertisers. And that's something where, again, you see this combination of what magazines are good at, which is content, advertiser relationships, and marrying that up with what retailers are good at, which is managing relationships with their customers. And that's another potential nexus and meeting point. Another example of this is Wired. Wired has a pop-up store that they do. This one happened to be on Times Square. They also do it in the foyer of the Condé Nast building in New York, which is right around the corner from Times Square. So one of the busiest points on the planet. This is something they do in the couple of weeks leading up to Christmas every year. So again, Wired has relationships with companies who advertise in Wired magazine, and they're extending those relationships into a physical environment at exactly the right time of the year. So they're enhancing the relationship with their customer, and they're also enhancing the relationship with their advertisers. Condé Nast, again, is doing something interesting themselves, and I think there's an interesting corollary to this, which is this is Condé Nast's building in London, where they've set up a magazine store that showcases every single magazine they publish, right? So if you want to get Italian Wired when you're in London, the one place you can be sure of getting it is the Condé Nast store. But we've seen a corollary development to this, which is specialized magazine stores. There's stores in Berlin. There's a store in Munich called Soda Books, which is kind of doing the same thing. It's a store just focused on magazine sales. And if you go back to my point about vinyl, it's treating the magazine as more than a commodity product, more than a container for its contents. It's really treating the magazine as a physical object that demands to be in print. And here's just another shot of the Condé Nast store, which you can see is also introducing technology, which is so that Condé Nast's iPad editions of their magazines can be showcased. Other partnerships we see with retailers is, I was in Paris last week. It was Fashion Week. And this is the W.H. Smith store on Rue de Rivoli, just in front of the Jardin des Tuileries, where every year those from Comag, this is what they run with them, is a promotion that they do. I think 7 or 8 windows that face the high street there. They do a big takeover of the windows, each window showcasing the brand. Highly relevant time of the year, Fashion Week. And this is something, again, that retail delivers. It takes your brand, your magazine brand, and extends it into a physical environment. We'll come back to brand in a moment. And this is, I was glad to see that Tom brought up the phenomenon of pop-up stores. This is something we do every year with Art Dubai. We set up a temporary bookstop, a pop-up bookstore at Art Dubai, and we showcase both books and magazines. And in 4 days last year, we did over $50,000 sale at this store. Magazines represented a significant portion of those sales as well. So again, getting in front of the right audience, which is what retail does a really good job of, getting in front of the right audience and showcasing your product to them at exactly the right time. So another side to this is the impact and power that print still has. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this pretty controversial cover of Newsweek from a couple of weeks ago. Whatever you may think about the ethics or politics of using this as the cover, it's undeniable that the fact that this was showcased on supermarket checkouts instead of just being online had a lot to do with the conversation that went around this. So not just, as I said, treating the magazine as a physical object, taking your brand and extending it into a physical environment, and starting and stimulating conversation and really keeping your brand relevant in front of people, because access and availability leads to relevancy. This is something that, again, retail does in a way that's difficult to achieve in purely digital channels. So last week, or 2 weeks ago, I was at the World Retail Congress in London. And this slide, in many forms, we've even seen it here earlier today, was put up time and time again. Retailers are coming to the realization, or have quite some time ago come to the realization that their customers are going to want to find them through every available channel, be that physical channels, be that digital channels. And when you're thinking about brand owners, so I'm really talking about publishers here, you in a sense, the phrase being used for this is omni-channel, right? looking at all the various touch points available to you and having a solution available for those touch points. I think a lot of work has obviously gone into brand building in the first place. A lot of work has gone into the digital side, both on websites and smartphones, but as we've seen again time and time again today, newsstand sales still represent a substantial portion of print revenue. And the physical store, I feel, to some extent is being neglected, and opportunities are being missed by not working with specialty retailers. And a couple of examples I'm going to give. So one of the companies that's doing a very good job of thinking about how technology, or one of the retailers that's doing a very good job of thinking about how technology functions in a retail store is Barnes & Noble with the Nook. What they've done is the Nook is a device that actually functions differently when it's in a Barnes & Noble store and when it's not in a Barnes & Noble store. When you're in a Barnes & Noble store on the Wi-Fi network of that store with your Nook, you basically have access to every single, you can sample every single ebook available in Barnes & Noble's collection. So you can start to read as you would with a physical book. So what they've done is they've mirrored real-world physical activity, traditional way you would browse for books in a bookstore, and mirrored that activity digitally. When you leave the store, you have the option to buy the book. If you choose not to, the book disappears from your device. If you choose to, obviously, Barnes & Noble has closed the loop and made a sale. So this is a very innovative use of technology in a store. And again, Barnes & Noble is one of the major places where magazines are sold in the States. Are magazine publishers using this opportunity in the same way book publishers are? Just putting that question out there. And the Nook is coming here to the UK, and the reason I put up this slide is because two non-traditional media retailers are going to be carrying the Nook. That's Argos, which is a catalog retailer who have physical delivery points, and John Lewis, which is a department store chain that also owns the supermarket chain Waitrose, which does carry a compact range of magazines, but this is the first time John Lewis is getting really into media sales. And again, these are they're very different audiences, Argos and John Lewis, very different audiences. But again, these are opportunities. If you think about getting your media and your brand onto the devices, preloaded, doing sampling, et cetera, there's different opportunities there for partnering with these retailers who, again, you as publishers probably have presently no relationship with. One of the reasons that these partnerships are important is one last anecdote I want to share. This is the Economist app on the iPad. Had a meeting with a friend who is a managing director of a large international company. He was not an Economist reader. He would buy it occasionally at travel retail points, so he knew the brand only through retail. When he bought his iPad, after the novelty of owning the iPad wore off, what did he do with it? He looked at what media he could buy on it, and obviously had recall of the Economist brand through his interactions with it at retail. And so going back to the omnichannel, this was just one of the last statistics I wanted to share with you about the value of omnichannel. Omnichannel customers who interact with a brand via multiple channels spend up to 3.5 times more with a brand than typical consumers who only act via a single channel. Thank you very much.